is awesome. Also, I remember very vividly this one thing, and it was in my CSS design class, I believe, with Jeff Janelle. And he would always say, never underestimate people's stupidity. And that always stuck with me. And so, whenever I design something, I'm in web and throughout coding anything, I'm never underestimate people's stupidity. So I'm very big on having everything user journey friendly, user experience friendly. So that's always stuck with me throughout all my years that I've been, or all my, I guess, year that I've been a web designer so far.
I would say learning to code or being forced to learn to code, because I really didn't want to take interactive design classes. I was like, I'm going to work in advertising and do posters and do all the fun design stuff. And I don't know if we still split the degree program by print and interactive. But I was like, oh, I'll take web design because it's there and I'm curious. But I'm coding's for nerds. I want to do the artsy stuff. And then I learned to code in Amanda's class, and I was like, oh, this isn't so bad. You can be creative with this, and that stuck with me. And when I graduated, my first internship and then later first job was at an ad agency where I was the only one who knew how to code just from that experience, and got handed all the web design projects. And I was like, this is my first year working. I didn't know what I was doing, but those foundations that HTML, CSS I learned here at Valencia was saved me, and I went on to do front-end development in one of my jobs just based on that. So stick with it. It's not that bad. It's creative.
So one moment in specific that comes to mind is I always kind of attribute good things that happen to me is due to my community and what I give them and what it gives me. So I think there was a moment when I was my first, maybe second year, that we had one holiday party at Christie's, and I started meeting kind of people that had gone through the program, and then meeting people that were just starting. So to me, there was always, during that time, this kind of I don't know, unspoken mentorship that, the older student or more advanced students or recent grads were kind of, giving us insights and things to watch out for and recommendations when, kind of built-in advisors, I guess. And that's something that kind of then I passed on to friends that I had made that were, I guess, newer to the program. So to me, there was always this huge camaraderie, and it was because of those kind of personal moments and spending time together. That it's just not, we're not in competition with each other when we're in here. We're just here to help each other out.
So I did the whole program online. I started in fall of 2020, so there was no real world then. So as far as what stayed with me the most, I think not having in-person classes. There was one class, and I was on the print track 100% because I'm not gifted with any kind of coding, although I did have a Mindy Curtin, she was great, it was a great class. But it's best left in the memories. No, but I did have one professor for a web design class. We had to learn Figma, which is I don't even know how to describe it, web design program, I don't know. But I think that taught me so much that in the world of design, there's so much changing constantly as far as the programs you use and what's going, I'm sure you've read about artificial intelligence doing design now and taking away all our jobs, and which isn't true. It's okay, you're safe. But there's just so much that you're gonna have to teach yourself even after you graduate, long after you graduate. And I'm only a few months out, and I'm oh, I need to learn this. But learning Figma is also what landed me the job I got now, right out of school. So they loved that. I was yeah, it's free. Anyone can do it. But yeah, just you're always gonna be learning. If you think that you're not gonna have to teach yourself things down the road, like, you are, and it's a good thing. It could land you a job, so, yeah.
Got my own mic. Yeah, give me my own mic. Dangerous. No, most impactful for me was probably 8 years ago. So I actually started here with the design certificate program, which is it's like, what is it, 4 semesters, 2 semesters, or just a handful of credits. And it was extracurricular credits for UCF in advertising. And why it was impactful for me was because those few classes that I took, just for a few credits, helped me put together like a very small, just print booklet of like a rebranding of Jimmy Hula's restaurant. And I remember going to an internship expo at UCF, and all the people looking for internships had copy samples and things like that. And I had this awesome book that put together a rebranding of Jimmy Hula's, and that landed me an internship at an ad agency in Orlando, which at the time was like, hey, you hit it big, you're a young kid, you have an internship at an ad agency. And to me that was like, wow, this program, really, if you stick with it, if you put everything you want into it, it rewards you. So that was the most impactful for me, and everything has launched since then, so. I don't know.
So I just wanted to say, don't feel free to not go in order. If somebody has something to say before anyone else, you can totally just let us know and we'll give you the microphone. But along the same line of the question you just asked, what was something that you found really challenging in the program that, or overwhelming perhaps, something like that?
Kind of a funny answer. Amanda's classes. I am in the same boat. I am
Still love you.
I love you, and I'm so glad that I passed your classes. Because I think it was like web, and then like the first interactive, it was like Flash class. Listen, my brain is not wired that way. I mean, honestly, I tried, but that was challenging for me.
Flash is irrelevant now.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, certainly, I remember trying to make it a goal to impress my professors, and that's just, you would be in a critique and Jason would be like, that's amazing. And you'd be like, I remember that being a challenge, but such an unnecessary challenge for the program, because it's not about that. It's more about taking in the feedback. So that was a totally unnecessary thing, but certainly something to consider. But
let's see. The most overwhelming or challenge, I guess, for me was probably time management. I was taking 4 to 5 classes per semester while also maintaining a full-time job. So it was a lot of learning how to balance my time while also not trying to burn out at the same time. So that also really helped me in the future whenever I was out of school and I had all this free time. I could get different hobbies and stuff, and that is something I always that motivated me to the end of the light of the tunnel, I guess. So I always looked forward to that, and being able to be here now, I guess, is kind of full circle moment for me. So, but I'd say whatever challenges you're going through, you can do it. If I could do it, you can. So.
My answer is also Flash. I'm very glad it's no.
you're welcome. Thank God it's dead, right?
It's terrible.
I think, is the whole program mostly online still, or are we still?
We have some on-campus offerings. We definitely have a lot more mixed mode and smart TV. So it's definitely very all over the place.
Okay, because I think that was probably the hardest part for me, was making connections with people in an online school environment. If your professor required you to have your camera on, then you got to see people's faces, and that was it. And that was a maybe, if they even had Zoom classes. So that was really hard, but I think the most overwhelming part was building my portfolio. I think they encourage you to take all the time you need to do that. And I didn't have all the time that I wanted, so I was So I did it, you know, I took my portfolio prep class, and the next semester I took portfolio review. So I was like, all right, and it was a summer semester too, so it was like 10 weeks, and it was like, oh my gosh. I was like, all right, this portfolio has to be like, I remember telling myself, like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be good enough to get me a job. I was like, I just need a job. I just got married that year, and then we found out I was pregnant. So it was like, I gotta graduate now, like yesterday. So there was like a lot of pressure, and that was, and you know, I was working a full-time job too. So I was like, okay, gotta, like, it was just so many things. So obviously it worked out, but you know, you can always go back and work on more of your portfolio too. Like, it's not the only portfolio you will, those projects will not be there forever. Like, I did put the year on mine, so I knew that, like, okay, by 2024, I gotta have a new portfolio. I like put a timer on myself for it. So yeah, that was probably the most overwhelming though.
Biggest challenge I think is keeping projects small. I think it's easy to get, you know, run away with a project in your mind, and then you look at the timeline you have, and you're like, crap, I just can't do all these things that I thought I wanted to do. So I think that's the biggest challenge is, you know, thinking big, but then reeling that back in and executing on the small. Because you can't get perfect when you think smaller. Or you can't get perfect when it's huge. Reel it in a little bit. You can't execute make things perfect.
Very good, okay, all right, show of hands. How many of you all graduated in 2 years or less? 3 years.
That makes me feel so much better.
4 years. Okay, so everybody managed to finish within 4 years. A big question a lot of our students have, or a comment, is you can't complete the program in 2 years if you're really truly putting together quality work, but 2 to 4 years is pretty. How many of you all actually worked a full-time job at the same time as you went to school? How about a part-time job? Any of you guys went to school with kids as well? And an audience? All right, so we talked about time management, and as a student, can you guys give us some tips? When you were in school, what helped you manage your time so that you'd be successful? Because all of you were very successful students in our program. You're clearly successful in the industry as well. So let us know what it looked like in school versus what it looks like now for time management and managing projects and like balancing your life at school versus work.
I got the microphone, so I get to start. I think that last tip was really spot on, which is like scoping appropriately. Is like, I think I fell into that trap a lot in school as well, which is like, I had this big idea and I wanted to execute against it, but then I looked at the timeline and what I had to do for my other classes, and then I had work, and like, you just, scoping it smaller is always gonna do you a favor, and I still struggle with that at work today. You know, you look at the timeline that you have, and when you need to deliver something, and now it's on me as a design manager to help other folks do the same, which is like, figure out what we can do and, you know, how we can create impact in a limited time. Today I track my work in Trello. It's like a project management type tool. You can customize it to be whatever you want, but I have a to-do list just for myself. Otherwise, I would like never get anything done because I have a really terrible memory. So I take a lot of notes, and every Monday I try and like plan out my week. I'll like block things out in my calendar for myself, and that kind of helps me stay on track.
It was how, or
Time management. Yeah.
Time management, how did you manage to get through school, obviously you had to be successful managing your time, but then also let us know if anything's changed since then now that you're working in the industry.
so, let's see, through school, and I still do this now, I just haven't stuck to it as much as I'd love to. I made use of the Pomodoro timer. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with that, but you basically work 30 minutes on, take a 5-minute break. I'm the type to just continuously work until my project is done, but having implemented that system, like I make sure that I work for 30 minutes and then I take 5 minutes to stretch or pet my dog or do something to get my mind off of it. Gives your mind a good break as well as gives yourself a break, like to just be free from the project, or if you're even stuck on something that you can't figure out at the moment. In work, when I was an intern, I did a lot of different things. So right out of the program, I was interning at a small agency called Reach. And over there, I was doing a lot of different things, from marketing to design work, creating content, going to places to get that content. So it felt like I was really all over the place, and that's where my time management kind of slipped out. Doing things like having an agenda, sticking to a schedule was helpful, but also just making sure you're blocking out time for yourself, as well as like making sure that you have time for yourself is really big, because for me, I burn out really easily, so making sure that you have that time management for yourself as well as for work. But yeah, I think time management wise, I feel a lot better industry wise now. I feel, since I did go into Valencia during the pandemic also, like that prepared me a lot for working from home. So I was able to manage my time more, I guess. It was all on yourself, so that helped out a lot, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that time management as far as like being a student, my life was so much different as a student than it is now. I have 4 kids and I didn't have 4 kids then, so it was like, it's a lot different. So time management as a student, I remember like starting a project and being like, this looks cool, this could be part of my portfolio, and then I was able to like add on a couple pieces or whatever and make it a case study, you know? So, and at that time I would just like sit and crunch it all out. And you know, I would get inspired by class or by other people's work, and then I would just like, you know, get a case study out and be like, all right, that's one, you know, and get another one done. And then now it's very much like, and I used to use time management software then too, but now it's like, there's no possible way I could use time management software, so it's like very impossible. I am like all over the place now as far as time management goes, but on a good day, when there are no kids around, I can go into the office and focus. It's like, I kind of try to relate it as to being a student, where it's like, you know, bang out like a bunch of pieces, but now I have to work with like a whole marketing team. And I have to keep in consideration like their timelines, and you know, it's easy to respect deadlines as long as you have like time management or some kind of idea of it. But with other people, that certainly becomes like more, you know, a little bit more of a challenge to consider. I hope that makes sense to a degree, yeah.
Yep.
Bold of you to assume that I know how to manage my own time, first of all. No, but my serious answer, and I think it could be, someone might glean something out of it. I am horrible at time management, but something that I learned like early on while I was a student was, it's kind of like, I don't know, when you're a kid that you learn that, are you like an audiovisual learner, or like what are the other ones? Visual, reading, audio, all those things, right? So early on, I realized the kind of creative, I guess, I am, that, you know, my peak creative hours are like 9 p.m. to like 2 in the morning. Like, I know like I've made my best work during those hours. So it's good that I do have the flexibility that, you know, sometimes I'm working those hours during the week and it's fine, like I don't have kids and all of those things. So I think it's more of a question, or more of a thing of realizing what are the things that work for you, and then take all these awesome tips of blocking out times and all of those things and apply it to the kind of person that you are. Because I think it is fine if you're not, you know, like a 9 to 5 kind of person in your head. And I think now with like remote learning and like remote work and all of that, there's definitely more flexibility in that. And I think for sure that's something that influenced kind of like the career path that I'm in, that I'm just like, I work for myself at home. I don't need to go to an office. I don't have to like report to a boss. Like, I report to my clients, but it's like, they'll get the email when they get it. But then like in the practical sense, you know, like the way I schedule my day is that like my creative time is usually like in the evenings, but then I have the morning that it's just like the admin stuff. Like I do love like an 8:30, 9 a.m. meeting, because that means that I need to wake up like really early, get my stuff together, and become like a productive member of society. So like I kind of like bully myself into doing those things, but it kind of like it works. So
Like Holly, I use a software called Jira, which is really similar to Trello at work, but also when you do work with other people as part of a team, it's very difficult with the timing of when I get the information I need and when it's expected for my final product to be done. It sometimes doesn't all add up. As far as working like schoolwork goes, I'm like a list maker. If I can like cross things off a list, like a handwritten list, old school, like it makes me feel so much more accomplished. And also like I really break it down, and I still do this too. Like if I have like an assignment where I have to make like, I don't know, any kind of campaign, you know, if it needs a landing page, an email, a print, something, I would just write down every single thing it needs, and then I go down, and even if they're little things, I can at least cross them off, and I feel more accomplished. I've got a list of 9 things to do instead of just like project 1 at the end of it, and then you're like, wow, I did 1 thing today. It's like, no, I did 26 things. But you know, so that was really helpful for me, especially because it was online, and you know, the flexibility that comes with online can be a blessing and a curse, I think. You know, it's like, wow, I can do whatever I want with my time, but then it's also like, oh no, I can do whatever I want with my time, and it will not be homework. So yeah, I think that's how I made sure I got things done and managed my time. If I could just see it all laid out in front of me, I'd be like, all right, I can get this done, or like, all right, this has to move to tomorrow because I have 45 things on here and that's not gonna work, so.
Yeah, I think you actually brought up a great point, because I'm terrible at time management. You know, if I have X amount of time on a project or a deadline, I'm gonna use all that time, and sometimes not sleep about it, or you know, not sleep period. But I like the way you put it, which I think is what I'm good at, which is not time management, but task management, which is listing out, you know, what this project involves, or what, you know, I need to do today for this project, and crossing those things off, and making sure you execute on those things, and you know, bring the deliverables for that thing. So I think I'm more deliverable based, not so much time based, because I'm awful at time management. Awful at time management.
Oh, real quick, and just because I didn't get that, but you mentioned that you like to use your entire time for a project. Do you all start immediately, or do you take some time to start a project? Whether you were like back when you were in school or now in your careers, like do you immediately once the assignment is made, like do you
I think our brains start. I don't know if I
Yeah.
start in the program or in the app.
right,
but
the idea is cut.
I think I'm just obsessive, and you know, whether it's about this project or that project, I'm not thinking about it, so.
Perhaps a more appropriate question though might be, the timeline you had for your projects in school, how does that compare to what you get in the industry?
I got a project today, it's due Thursday. That's the way it works. Things pop up immediately, and you just have to be ready for it. And you're on a team, so I mean, like, it's not just you. You have teammates. Everyone's carrying the load. Things come out of nowhere. It's much faster paced. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but where I work is much faster paced. But that's just part of the job. Again, you just execute on the deliverables. It's task based.
Yeah, it's definitely faster based in the industry than it is in school. I think that was like the biggest wake up call to me in my internship was like, whoa, wait, hold on. Like, not only like, I mean, I was taking full-time course load every semester. I was taking 4 or 5 classes. So you think you have like 4 or 5 projects, but not when they're all due in the same week. Like it's, you know, there's one class where you build a magazine throughout the whole semester, and it's like, nope, that's a couple weeks. Like that's, things fly. And that was definitely the most jarring when I started interning. But you just adapt, like you have to do it, so you just do it. And I don't know, yeah.
I'm trying to remember how I was as a student. I think for me, I also do, like you kind of like briefly mentioned it, but I never like start right away, but I get myself, wow. It's not that controversial, but it's really okay. Oh, I am the kind of person like I try, you know, in my small attempt at success, I try to get myself organized like early on. And then there's in that timeline, there's a big chunk of like procrastination in the middle. I do thrive with like a deadline that it's like, oh, you want this on Monday? You know what I'm doing on Sunday, the whole thing. But kind of like do the early on, like if it's like research or if it's something that I'm not familiar with or whatever, do that early on. So throughout the time that I am like procrastinating, I'm thinking about it. That's my problem solving time. Even if I'm not, I don't need to be like in front of my computer, in front of my iPad, sketching or doing whatever. But it's always kind of like percolating. And I think, I don't remember who said it, but it's like the whole thing, it's like writers do this, that it's like the thinking time also constitutes writing, you know? So I am that kind of person, like I start hard, then take a break, and then like end hard.
I love that. In the real world, timelines are a negotiation technique. I've learned they are highly collaborative. In software design, you are working with a lot of other teams. So design is usually the beginning of the funnel. So a lot of time as designers, like working with my team, it's about figuring out, okay, what do we want the timeline to be? Like, what do we need to do to feel good about the work we're handing off to engineering, for example? Like, do we need to do user research, or do we need to do like a brainstorming session with the team? And we're creating the timeline a lot as designers, and so being able to articulate our process for design and why it's valuable to our partners in order to dictate the timeline when they will get a like final UI mock-up is a skill that you will learn very quickly because not everyone understands. They're like, well, you just pop in Figma and like draw some boxes and you're done, right? Like, and so like being able to advocate for the value of design and like your process and why it follows a certain path is a valuable skill to learn early in your career, so that you can push back when engineering is like, we need it next week. You're like, well, no, in order for it to be good and like hit the goal that we have for this work and hit the right metrics, I need to be able to do my job, and here's what that looks like. So, yeah, that's something I learned.
Yeah, going off of that, for me, let's see, my timeline as a student, I feel like I stuck to it like to a T. Like I was obsessive over completing it early. And so that was like me as a student, and now the timelines fluctuate in like the real world, I guess. Like some projects I get now, they're like, we need this change done like 2 hours ago. And I'm like, what? Okay. And so I'm there like trying to fix it as fast as I can. Or like some clients, they'll say, oh, you know what? Like, and the thing that I learned too, and what surprised me is like clients, they also take breaks too. Like they have like lives too. So some projects like we'll have done, and then they're like, oh, well, it's still in the approval process, and while we're waiting on that, like we can work on other things. But I'm like, I don't know what to do with my time. Like, I have no idea how to keep myself busy. But I would say it does fluctuate, but sometimes it's a lot faster than as a student. Some projects, like one project I'm working on, it's been about like 3 months, and it's been a long journey, but we've been going back and forth and doing other things with the client, and it's been a lot of fun, but also quite stressful, like when is it gonna be done? But yeah, I would say it does fluctuate, but if you learn how how to, I guess, manage your time wisely and taking tips from others and really relying on your team is a big thing too, because I always thought, where I always had the mentality that I wanted to do everything possible, like to take the responsibility for it. But you know you can like rely on other team members and delegate tasks to others, so that's been super helpful and helpful like getting the project done faster as well. So yeah, no, yeah, Mike.
I think they all said it like perfectly. I don't really have anything to add except don't take the timelines for granted here because everything is up in the air until it's like due. You know, like everyone wants to change something or they need a change done like 2 hours ago or whatever, or you know, like, so it's always like extremely back and forth. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's fast paced, and you're like, what is going on? Everyone's like over, you know. So everything is laid out for you in school. So it's like, it's a beautiful brief that you wish for in the industry. It's exactly what you wish for. Look at all the specs, the copy. Oh my God, it's all here. The deliverables, boom, like, but don't take the timelines for granted, guys. Don't do it. It gets crazy sometimes. But overall, the timelines, I mean, yeah, it fluctuates. You know, like sometimes it's similar to school, but overall, like, it's back and forth. So.
Okay, so I just wanted to know, what is one thing you wish you learned in school but didn't, but in the same realm of that? Like, what is a skill that you would recommend every student that's graduating in the program definitely know after graduation? Here.
I'm just like breaking the order that we're going in. I think, and this is it's kind of like my own canned answer, and I think specifically if I'm just gonna sidebar, like all the things that I'm saying is because I'm like, I don't work in a team, like I can get away with my crap. So I'm not like an example, I'm just like an exception. The thing that I wish I learned, at least as a freelancer, I think it's better when you're like within an agency, a company, things like that, but talking about money, talking about business, setting up, if you're starting like an LLC, things like that, talking about negotiating contracts. I know we might have touched a bit about, you know, the cons for like work for hire and things like that, but I think it's something that it's like, we say, oh, these are very important conversations, and then the conversation ends there. And then we're all just like flailing and just like, what am I doing, you know? And I think that's where I rely in my community and my friends. Like I would say like a lot of my friends are creatives, a lot of them illustrators. So it's always like, I get a contract, it looks iffy, the payment, it's weird, and there's kind of like my the people that I bounce it off. So I think that's something that I wish, kind of like the business of design or the business of creative has to be a class. The great thing is that there's so many sources out there, resources, to find out more. Like there's the Guild, which is like, it's my personal Bible. I always like look back, it's like, I don't know how to charge for stuff. So like I'm like, oh, what's the standard? So thankfully there are resources, but I think it has to be a more common conversation.
In the same way that we all walk out here with a portfolio at the end of the program, you guys should all walk out here with an LLC after the program too. It isn't just if you plan on being like a full-time freelancer, it's those opportunities pop up. Like people come to you, like it just happens. So you're either prepared for them or you're not. And you know, I wasn't, most of us aren't, but you know, we walk out here with a portfolio, which gets us jobs or helps us get jobs. But if those jobs come to you, you know, walking out here with an LLC or contracts are prepared or having that business sense, that's huge. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, and that's so true. I was working at a restaurant through my schooling here, and then actually like a year ago, they were like, hey, we're opening a new restaurant. We know you're in school for graphic design, and we saw that project you sent us where you rebranded our restaurant. We want you to brand this new restaurant that we're opening. And I was like, sweet, I get to tell my bosses what they're gonna pay me. I was like, I was like, okay, cool. So I literally designed their menus. It was a super cool opportunity. But that is so true. They just pop up like these, someone will know that you're a designer or word of mouth, and you get gigs. It's super cool. Yeah.
Yeah, adding on to that, I would say the same thing, being able to learn more about that, because there have been, as you guys said, many opportunities that I've had, but I'm like, I have no idea what even is like the first step, or like how to make a contract, what to charge, what is like the right thing to do, or how do I even like specify what I can do for this client. So I fully agree with everyone else with what they said. Like, it'd be cool to learn how to manage like yourself as well as how to project yourself to others.
It's immediately what came to my mind too. I got nothing to add except salary conversations would be nice to know, because you don't really know and you go in a little blind, but like Raina said too, there's a lot of resources out there online that you can actually like find out more information on, or you can just straight up ask people, so.
I'll give a different answer. I'll give 3 answers. The first is, if you want to work in software design, learn how to do user research and interview people. It's a really valuable skill. You might learn that here now. I don't know. It's been a long time since I went to school, but it's a very different skill than being a designer. Like, how to interview people and not ask leading questions, and how to synthesize after you've interviewed 5 people. Like, what do you do with all of that information? So that's one. The second is kind of related to like critique, which I know you all do here, but storytelling. Like, know how to tell a good story. Presenting your work never goes away. So like, being able to do that and feel comfortable doing that and telling a compelling story. You won't be doing it to you might not be doing it to clients, but you're gonna be doing it to your peers. So other designers you work with, you're gonna be doing it to your like engineering partners or product partners who you work with, to get them excited about the design that you're doing and make sure they're on board with it. Again, you're part of the team. And then the third one is related to portfolio review we've been talking about. Never stop promoting yourself. It sounds really like egotistical, but I gave a talk about this at work a few years ago that I call it like hype yourself. Like, you can have the most amazing manager in the world who like is supportive and like trying to help you grow in your career, but they will never know all the amazing things that you do. Only you know that. So whenever you get good feedback from, whether it's like a client or like one of your partners at work, or like someone on another team, like screenshot that, like document that, put that in a folder. When you finish a project, think about, okay, if I had to go get a new job tomorrow, how would I talk about this in a portfolio? And like, take a few minutes for yourself to like document that. Because every company I've ever worked at has some sort of like performance review, annual review process where you have to make the case that like you are doing a good job at your job. Sometimes your manager has to write that, but every manager I've had has come to me and been like, can you remind me everything you did the last year and like what impact it had so I can go write this thing? So after not doing that for a long time and then being like, oh crap, like what did I do the last year? Did I do anything meaningful? I learned to just keep notes for myself. So about once a month, I try and be like, what have I been working on? Like, jot down a couple of notes, like, oh, this went really well. Note things that you learn, because you're always learning new things. And then it becomes really easy at that annual review process to be like, look at all the great things I've done.
All right. This is a very controversial question. I need you guys to out your biggest mistake while you were in school. What was the worst thing you did while you were in school as a graphic design student? Go for it, Brad.
That's a hard one. Not because we made a lot of mistakes, but shoot. I mean, immediately my misuse of spray glue comes to mind. Me thinking I could get away with cutting boards without a ruler also comes to mind. Mat boards, right? Yeah, good stuff. You guys probably don't even do that much of that anymore, do you? Like,
Oh yes,
it's still a thing? Okay, cool. Well, that's immediately what comes to mind is those little trivial things. I don't have a huge mess up or mistake, I don't think. Spending my financial aid money really early, maybe, but that's probably, I don't know.
Yeah, this is a hard one. I don't know. Nothing really comes to my mind. Like, yeah, go ahead, please.
So I think, you know, I'm always gonna be a proponent of like trying new things, do all the things. I think one of specific mistakes that I remember making was in like the last class, like the portfolio class when you have to do your self-promotion. It was that era of like everyone was doing like craft paper kind of, you know, stuff. And I'm like, well, I want to be on trend, right? And then I decided as like my leave behind, I was gonna like give them like a little notebook that I made that ended up being just like punched through with like a ring and was fully unusable. And I'm like, why am I like book binding as a person that has obviously never done it and did like a crappy job and like that's my leave behind? Like it says nothing about me. It just speaks to what everyone was doing. So I think, you know, I guess the positive spin to that is like you gotta be kind of like true to your voice, and it's like if your thing is like like skate decks you mentioned, I'm like, right, like your business card is like in the shape of a skate, or what is it, like a skateboard, thank you. You know, like have it be true to you, and you know, don't book bind if you've never booked it before.
Oh, yes, actually. So I do remember one thing. It was on portfolio review night, and I remember I made my portfolio site through Webflow. But one thing I didn't do was test that the actual link was working. So on portfolio review night in this building, my link didn't work. So I was like, all right, well, I'm next to go. I don't know what to do. Luckily, since I did use Webflow, they have their webflow.io. That one worked, so I was saved. But I was really, really stressed out for like 10 to 15 minutes because I'm like, nothing is working, this is all broken. I remember I made myself like a little sign of where you can scan it for portfolio review. And even those links, like nothing was like popping up. So I was really stressed that beginning of the night, but everything ended up okay. But I would say that would probably be my biggest mistake or biggest regret. I did not check that beforehand.
I used to spend hours picking fonts. And it really doesn't matter. So when I was a student, I would be like, well, if I just had the money to buy this fancy font or this thing, my design would be so much better. And then you start working in the industry and you have much less fonts than you even had at school. So like really leaning into just typography best practices. Like it doesn't matter how many fonts you have, or like if you have the latest, trendiest fonts. Like being able to confidently design with, you know, hierarchy and all the other great principles of type with a very limited font set will serve you well.
Real quick, do you have a favorite? Your
No.
go-to? No.
You can't ask a designer that question.
Worst mistake I made in school, probably, this is like a really bad one. It's like, come on, dude. It'd be like handing in late work, because it just is like such a terrible habit to get into. Not that I like did it all the time, but maybe once or twice things were late and I was like, and that does not fly in the industry. Like as far as where I am, that's like, that is a no-go. Like it's a deadline. It has the word dead in it, it's serious. So yeah, that's definitely, and like, that hasn't been an issue, but you know, it can become an issue if you're like one of those people that's like, yeah, just gonna like sneak this in the next day or like at 12:02 a.m. instead of 11:59. Yeah, it's just like, no, don't do it. Have it done a day early and then it's on time. And that's like the rule I stick by. So, yeah.
So I attended college twice, once at UCF, 8 years ago, and then most recently, Valencia for an associate's degree, and UCF didn't result in a degree or result in anything. And I think the mistake there is not taking advantage of the resources that are available to you, and looking around and understanding that professors can help you. You're surrounded by very smart students who you can also help, and they can help you. So I think that was a mistake that I made early, was just not being appreciative or taking advantage of the resources that are openly available to you. And they make it known that they're available to you. So it's not like it is a hidden secret. It's the resources are there, you just gotta reach out for them.
I just remembered something. Another thing, like throughout school, I was never confident enough in my work. So I never applied for any of the ADDIE awards or anything. And that probably is my biggest regret, because if you don't try, like, you never know. So, like, I feel like as a student back then, I wish that I like put my stuff and submitted it. But yeah, so don't be afraid. Just submit your best work, and you never know what might come out of it. And then you can add it to your resume.
All right, thank you guys. Okay, so just to talk a little bit about the industry, in-house or agency, and then pros and cons of either.
I think it's a super broad question, because there's agencies that suck and there's in-house that sucks, and there's agencies that are awesome and there's in-house that's awesome. I recently started, so I worked in an ad agency for 5 years in print. I've recently transitioned into web and UX, specifically UX. Now I work at a giant corporation with 17,000 employees, biggest company I've ever worked for in my life, and would never think would work for a giant corporation before. And it's the best damn job I've ever had. So do not look at, corporate or agency or in-house or whatever, and think that one is, this is an agency, so it's gonna be great, or this is in-house, so it's gonna be boring. That's not the way it is. Look at the companies, look at the people who work for those companies. And the sky's the limit, and you can learn from so many different people in so many different places. So I wouldn't say either or, it's about those specific companies and the people that work at those companies.
I worked in each for exactly 3 months, so I obviously know everything about this topic. So I did my internship with an agency in Orlando, Big Eye Agency, and it was awesome. It was it was a really creative place to be, which is, as creatives, that's like, it was so easy to thrive there, and they're just like, okay, you have clients from all different industries, and again, it's different from agency to agency, but where I was, it was super cool. In-house is different, as far as like first impressions. You're working with the same brand every day. With the company I'm with now, they're like an umbrella company, and they have like 6 brands underneath them, so I do get to like touch a little bit of all of them, which is cool. I design different things for different companies and their brands underneath them, but they all I go through their font books or their brand books, and it's like every font is the same across the board. I'm like, okay, who made this? Like, different brands, different fonts, guys, come on. So I think that those are like the 2 biggest differences to me. Like, you always have the same client when you're in-house, as opposed to you have so many different clients and very different scopes of work too when you're working in an agency, I think. Typically, so far in my current job, like, every scope of work is the same. They release a new product, it gets a landing page, an email, social media stuff, a print flyer thing, a sales sheet, so it's just like every product is the same setup, so I just kind of, but yeah, I think they both have pros and cons for sure. You just kind of have to decide what you're looking for.
I have nothing wrong to say about either of them, because they are the ones hiring me to do illustration work, so they're awesome. I do have to say, my first job was in an agency. I really did like it, but I knew it wasn't for me. I cannot tell you specifically why. That's
I've worked for both, definitely pros and cons. I like to think agency life is good for a like breadth of experience, and in-house is good for depth of experience. At an agency, you will get to work on a bunch of different types of projects with different types of clients. But you will like do all the fancy design work and then like hand it off and then be like, bye, my baby. In-house, you build and design something and you release it and then you're like, cool, what's version 2 look like? And like you get to keep iterating on it and you develop a like subject matter expertise in your users and like the area that you're working in. So the longer I've been in my career, the more I've gone in-house for the types of roles that I like, because I like that iterating. I don't want to like build a thing and then hand it off to someone else. But you do learn a lot very quickly at an agency. So if you're not quite sure what industry is most interesting to you, or you want to like try a bunch of stuff, agency is a good move.
Yeah, going off of that, my first internship, I was literally like thrown to the wolves. I was doing so many different things for so many clients. I was doing stuff for like rodeos and then going to like work on stuff for zoos. So it was a lot of chaos. It was fun chaos. I learned a lot, but it was a lot of work. The agency that I'm at now, it's a lot of fun because we get to do mostly work with clients that are in the same industry. So they're different clients, but they're all doing the same products. But now I feel like I do have like a little bit more of like fresh breath at this agency, because I'm also able to do and work on our own branding and creating our version of our own websites, and they're open to that. So I think it's all depending on the company and what type of person that you are, what you like, what you're leaning towards, and what you want out of a job. Like what Sam was saying, really look at a company and their benefits. How long have the people been there? What does the future look like for you if you stay there? So.
Yeah, I think everyone here made a great point. I've only had in-house jobs. I've never worked at an agency. And being at EA, people are always like, yeah, I came from an agency. Oh, I miss the kegs. Ooh. And like, you'd be like, oh, cool. You know, and you're like, all right, yeah, you got a beer fridge, cool. But like, I didn't have to, like, I think that like, Holly made a great point. Like, I had the 4 jobs that I've had in-house. One of them was only 1 shift, and it was horrid. It was like helping out with like mass-produced like the canvases that they sell at like Michael's and Target, you know, like with the red telephone booth and then like black and white photo. That was a bad job. But like there's depth to different degrees of depth. Like, and then I worked at Orlando Weekly, where it's just constantly you're putting out ads, and like most of the time it's the same clients. So you do get an opportunity to like revise and make it better, and the client doesn't really care. They just want their ad in there. So like at that degree, you know. But with EA, it's like there's a lot of revisions that go over and over in each year. That's literally the goal. You're like trying to improve last year's version. So my in-house experience is and people always be like, yeah, I miss the agency life, and I'm like, I don't know, that's it, you know, like. But also, I work with a lot of agencies now too, directly, and I can see the appeal, and it's nice because there's also different levels of like what they deal with. So like, if a client only wants one drawing of like someone jumping, skydiving off of a freaking plane or something, you know, then like that's all they got to draw, and like you get paid $10,000 for it or whatever, you know, like. But then there's also studies where it's like 16 different pieces or 20 different pieces. So, and I don't know, I could see like the appeal of both, really. It's just a matter of like, you know, what speaks to you, so.
All right, so let's ask you guys, you all are extremely successful graduates. What is your biggest achievement since you graduated from Valencia? We'd like to brag just a little bit and talk about your accomplishments. Tell us one amazing thing that's happened to you since you graduated.
Well, I haven't had a lot of time, so I'll start. I have just graduated in August. One really cool thing that happened in my internship was that a client chose my logo. It was Orlando Health needed a logo for something, and they chose mine, which was really cool. So yeah, that was as far as, yeah, it's like the best thing you can ask for in an internship, right? Like a client thinks you actually work there. So, so that's cool.
So I work with like 76 other UX designers in our department, and we're a consulting company. So we have UX group, and then we have like developer groups, but there's this other development group who works in Power Apps, Microsoft Power Apps, which is like a business-to-business type tool, internal business tool. But it's not really designer friendly, so like developers can only develop inside of it. Designers can't really, you can't take a Figma file and have a developer, use that Figma file to make a tool. But Figma actually recently came out with a partnership with Microsoft that allows you can take a Figma canvas and convert that directly into Power Apps, so that you can take a text input or a card or drop downs, and that stuff will be implemented into Power Apps directly, and then the developers can just wire that all up for an awesome tool. So we had engineers who were designing apps, which you can imagine how that looks, which is not something against engineers. It's not their job to design. It's not their jobs to know usability like that. But I came across this connection with Figma that came out in May that allowed us on the UX side to actually take part in these projects. And these are massive amount of projects that our company takes on. It's a large income base. So recognizing that tool, me and another developer, or me and a developer, put together a presentation to our two teams, the UX team and the BPA team, put together a presentation showing how, here's what the UX team, what we can do together using Figma, this tool, and here's what we can produce for our clients. Because having, comparing what you can make in Figma and what designers can make to what like a regular enterprise tool looks like, it's pretty stark difference, especially when it comes to usability. So we put together a good presentation to allow our two departments who have never worked together to work together on these projects, which has opened the door for revenue for our department that didn't exist before. So like we have bench time where maybe you have designers who don't have a client currently. Well, there's constantly Power Apps projects going on, and now they can be part of these Power Apps projects because of this Figma tool. So that was huge for me. I'm just this new employee, been there for 3 months, 4 months, and now I'm doing a presentation in front of 300 people saying, hey, if we figure out a way to get thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars for our company. So that was big. So just keep your eyes open, keep your ears open.
So my, most success, or that at least people know me for now, I did work for a campaign at Target last year for Hispanic Heritage Month, where they invited 2 illustrators, so myself and this other guy. Just so happens that we were both Venezuelans, so it was kind of like Target celebrates Venezuela in my mind. And so that was an awesome, craziest experience. I was in their TV commercial, so it was my first acting gig, first and only. And that was definitely, in my top 10 clients that I always wanted to work with. And thanks to that campaign that we did, now a lot of the jobs that I've been getting have been thanks to it, because they've seen the campaign, they've seen the case studies about it. So I have been hired to do the work that I want to do, which is my illustration job, and it has allowed me to kind of focus on that and not to do work that I would, never post on my social media and things like that. So definitely that, it was super successful, but then it had legs, because now I've been able to move on to national clients. That's and it's always they always start with the, hey, we saw you at the Target thing. So it's kind of that's, it's part of my bio now, I love Target. Brand loyalty.
Yes. let's see, I spent most of my career in New York City, but then a few years ago I relocated to Atlanta briefly to work for MailChimp, the email marketing company that I'm sure you've all been spammed by. And I was there for a few months and very quickly realized I missed New York and did not want to live in Atlanta anymore. And I learned that MailChimp was expanding and they wanted to open a New York office. And I convinced them somehow to send me back to New York and to help grow the design practice there. And at the time the office was like 5 engineers and they went to like the little office. I think they have 4 offices around the country now. But so I convinced them to like pay for me to relocate to New York, adjust my salary accordingly, and get to hire a bunch of designers. So that was really fun. And then when I left, I think the office was about 80 people or so. So it was really fun to like build an office and build a culture there. And I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, mine is not that cool. But, so I've been in web design and development for like a year now, about, almost, which is crazy. But I would say my biggest accomplishment would be to see an idea that my boss originally had and to like change it up a bit and him be okay with it, and the client to be like, I love it, like it's awesome, all we need to add is a rocket. And so we did that, they loved it. So now a project that I worked on whenever I first got hired, it's gonna go international. So it's a whole website that is like my first little baby at this new job, and like it's gonna be so exciting to be able to see something come from an idea to like actually go out and to help people. So it'll be so cool.
I think all 5 of those stories are equally as awesome as each other. Those are cool. Mine is right before the pandemic. I worked on basically EA Sports does their own Super Bowl party like the night before the Super Bowl in the same city of the Super Bowl, and I had a chance to brand that event. It's basically an opportunity for them to like invite athletes and like other influencers and stuff and like have their, behind the scenes shoot or whatever. So I got to brand that event, and then I was able to actually go to it in Miami of 2020, and it was really cool to see like all the stuff I worked on like all over the walls, on printouts and stuff. Like it was just a really cool, surreal moment. And then on top of it, I got to meet one of my favorite podcasters from the 9 Club, Steezus, and that was really random and like didn't expect to see him there. I even was like, what are you doing here? He's like, because it was like a football related event, he's skateboarding related, but also apparently a big influencer, so didn't realize, but it was cool. Yeah, that was a really cool opportunity, so seeing that there.
I don't know, did you want to open it up by chance? Let's ask 2 more questions. Okay. So first, before we ask 2 more questions, I want to make sure, because I know some people came late, there is pizza and drinks in 3113, so if anybody is hungry, go for it. Go grab some pizza. All right. So we did have a question before we start opening up. One big question we have for you, because we're noticing it now in our program, it is extremely hard to keep up with the changes in the industry. Can you all give us a quick rundown of how in the world are you keeping up with the ever-changing things going on in the industry? Do you have tips for anybody in the audience today? Because it's happening so rapidly that we would love to hear from you all. What are you doing to keep up with the industry trends and the different changes that are happening?
To be honest, I mostly use Instagram. And I use it in the sense like I like to look at the agencies and what they're doing. There's a few specific design agencies that I follow, like I Love Dust. Their stuff is really cool. It's just, there's so many different agencies out there and like different things that they create. It's like amazing to find like things that like you wouldn't expect. So, I mean, I think Instagram is a perfect spot for it. And then just kind of like, asking your peers too. The design trends too that come out that are shared publicly a lot of the time are very informational. That's like basically a whole, booklet of projected, ideas of what's coming for the year. Those are available online a lot of the time, and you can just Google, design trend book or whatever. So there's a lot of random things, and then of course like design inspiration, like websites, random things like that. So someone over here probably has something better, but.
Yeah, going off of that, I would say yes, looking at a lot of website inspiration, especially as like a web designer, like you always want to know what like the newest trends are. I always look at like the awards one. They always have like the websites of the day, so I look at that a lot just to see. A lot of them are really insane, so I'm like, this is cool, but I'm never gonna do this. But it's a lot of fun to just look at different inspiration from different clients. Also, like one big thing for me is looking at Webflow. Like that's a new up and coming like no coding software for web design right now. So being able to see what people can create just with that software by itself is really amazing and opened up my eyes to what web design could be.
I work on a lot of internal tooling, so it's not super fun, cool looking, but like it doesn't really matter what the trends are. Like the thing just has to be easy for people to use to do their job. But I would say the biggest inspiration for me is just my peer group. So whether it's at the office, like we all use Slack to communicate, and like there's usually like a design inspiration Slack channel. People are always dropping cool links in. And then I also have a Slack group with a lot of like my former colleagues for us to all like keep in touch, and we share like problems we're facing at work and how we're troubleshooting that, or cool inspiration that way. But really, I mean, I work in software design, so just like using software, which you can't avoid. So like I mentioned, I use Trello. Like sometimes I'll notice a cool pattern in that app and think, oh, like what if we apply that to this problem I'm trying to solve at work? So like, just using the apps on your phone and like downloading cool new ones and trying them out, seeing what new like UI patterns they're trying and what feels good and what's like, oh, that's really confusing, and kind of analyzing why you feel that way. So just kind of like existing in the world as a designer is inspirational.
I think something that I have learned to kind of like trust myself in is to like always have like a healthy amount of skepticism about trends, about like technology constantly changing and all these like media companies popping up and this is the hot new thing and everyone's doing it and we should do it. I think you have to be weary of and like be honest with yourself. It's like why do I think this new trend is the right solution for whatever client problem design whatever that you're doing. And sometimes that is the answer for right now, but it might not be for whenever the new technology, the new trend comes out. So you have to think about the longevity of things. That sometimes the new bell and whistle works, but then you do have to be kind of like honest with yourself. It's like, is this sustainable? Is it I think there's one thing, I think like people do it with like fashion, which is the same, it's still creative, that it's like, if you're on trend, you're already kind of like out of it now, that it's like, and like honestly, personally, that has like stopped me a lot doing like personal work. That I'm like, oh, am I like too late for the trend? If I'm able to like conceptualize that whether I want to partake in a trend or not, I think I'm already late for it, And I think especially, and I think I'm like rambling in a weird tangent for the question. But I think at least for me, it's like very important and prevalent in the work that I'm doing right now, because I am creating like illustrations right now that the public is not going to see until like a year and a half after. So yes, you need to be weary, or you need to be aware of the trends that are happening, what's hot, what people like, and all of these things. But it comes to a point that it's like, I'm also not a mind reader. I don't know the future. So I gotta trust my own gut as an artist. That it's like, yeah, it might not be the cool thing in a year and a half from now, but I think it's good work, it's good technical, formal work that, you know, I hope has longevity, you know?
Yeah, Raina, I think you made a really good point about approaching it with skepticism. All these trends, you know, they really are here and gone so fast, which is why they're so hard to keep up with. You know, I remember when I was doing portfolio prep, you know, I was like, oh my gosh, like, how do I embody myself in a portfolio? What's my style? What's my brand? And like, it's so tempting to just go and be like, well, what's on trend? What happens when I go on Behance and just type in like portfolio? You know, like, then you see so many similar styles. And I think, you know, as creatives, as designers especially, we should be critical thinkers, and kind of asking you know, I think you can see a trend and be like, oh, I really like that. And I think the next question should be, how can I take it further? Or how can I make it mine? Or just, you know, I think sometimes it's easy to do like copycat stuff a little bit, like, oh, I can make that style, I can do that, I can, you know, make it look just like that if I need to, but how do I put my impression on it? How can I make it different? How can I make it last? How can I, you know, again, that's how trends, that's how you get ahead in trends. That's, you know, someone had a great idea and then someone had to push it further or dial back or, you know, whatever it was, so, yeah.
So I think if the question is about, you know, how to keep up with changing technology or, you know, changing tools, because there's so many tools that come out all the time. For me specifically, it's just been looking for tools or solutions about the problem that I'm currently facing. So even if I have a solution in my head, you know, searching out how that problem has been, you know, solved in other ways that will help me discover new tools or discover new solutions. Like I'm really big into Tailwind CSS right now. That's huge, popular, probably a fad, a little bit of a trend, but that solves a lot of problems that I was having with front-end development. That was not problems, but just frustrations. So for me, when it comes to like keeping up with technology, keeping up with tools, it's just you know, specifically finding tools that fit the problem that you're facing. Not, you know, don't just feel over like, oh, I need to go learn this tool now because this tool is being used. So was it, you know, is it solving your problem that you currently have? That's when you sort of, you know, reach out into new tools or new technologies.
Thank you. So let's go ahead, we're in the last half hour. Let's open it up to anyone who has questions. We do have a lot more questions we could ask, but we want to give you guys an opportunity. If anybody does have questions, is anybody brave enough to participate? Yes, ma'am.
When you guys graduated, was it challenging trying to, you know, find your first gig or find your first job once you started getting into the industry?
I owe every opportunity I've had to the professors and students that I've you know, went to school with. So I've been blessed in that way that every opportunity I had came from a reference. Whether it was a student who referenced me, the job I currently have came from a person who was part of my portfolio review, who I didn't remember who they were. And they called me and said, hey, there's an opportunity, and you know, are you interested? So that's sort of what happened is, you know, just the people around you.
Yeah, it was tricky finding a job after graduating, like, in all honesty. You know, there was obviously, like, I mean, for me anyway, it's always like, ooh, remote is the dream job. I would love to work from home and never have to get out of sweatpants. But, you know, so of course I'm like applying like crazy to remote jobs. I probably applied to over 100 jobs. I just literally anything graphic design. I was applying to jobs I wasn't qualified for, like senior graphic designer. I was like, sure, I can pretend. You know, I was, you know, like, you know, I guess a side note on that too, something I learned in my internship was, you know, they did a LinkedIn class for us where they kind of reviewed our LinkedIn pages, all of the interns, printed them out and like went around the whole office and everyone marked them up and was like, okay, like this is what I would change, or like this is really good, whatever. which was really helpful, but it also came back to kind of like resumes. And someone asked, they were like, well, you know, I have this experience with like, I'm technically the CEO of a company, but like, I don't really like run it or anything. And they were like, listen, if you can speak to it, put it on your resume. Don't like lie about it, but like, if you can honestly say like, I know what I'm doing about this, put it on your resume. Like I did, you know, before I did a lot of hand lettering. I would do like signs for weddings and stuff like that. And I did that for 5 years, so that was Damiano chalk, freelance. Like that was on my resume for 5 years, because I was like, you know what, that's work I did. I can speak to it. I had clients. I had client briefs. You know, so make sure you're giving yourself everything you can on your resume. But yeah, it was tricky. I was offered a job in South Florida, and I accepted it, and then I got a better paying job offer within like 2 weeks of each other, after I went through like 5 interviews with this first company. And then yeah, someone else offered me a job for better pay in Jacksonville, and I was like, okay, yep. I'm like, sorry guys. Money talks. so you know, it's like when it rains it pours, but it was a dry spell for a while though. It was difficult, but don't stop applying. Just apply for anything and everything you can find. You never know what's gonna happen.
I think at least in my experience, my first job out of school, so it was like towards the end of my time here, I got a professor, I think it was the first time I took his class, we hit it off and he mentioned like, oh, they're hiring interns. So like I think like a semester afterwards, I did an internship there, and then they ended up hiring me at this agency. So I think, you know, it's very likely that your first job or like the people that you're gonna work with are probably people that you already know or are like 1 or 2 degrees away with. So I definitely recommend, you know, asking the professors for like, hey, I saw this like agency in town or just whatever. Do you know anyone there? It's very likely that there's gonna be maybe like an alumni that works there, has worked there, that could connect you. I'm also like a big proponent of going to like events like AIJ Orlando events, Act2 events, like where you get to meet people, kind of like get the vibe. But I think it's very likely that you're already kind of like connected with that first job. You just gotta kind of like show your face and, I don't know, send many emails.
Yeah, learn how to use that LinkedIn search function, message people, take advantage of your network. Yeah, my first job came from a professor here, so make friends with your teachers, make friends with your classmates, because, you know, build that network. That's really, you know, people want to hire people that they know, and, you know, generally the places that you're interviewing want to hire you. They're like, not like trying to make you fail on an interview question. So it's not that bad. But like, yeah, network it's cliche, but it's really true.
Yeah, going off what Holly was saying, don't be afraid to network. I remember how I got my internship was actually through Valencia's job portal. So that's how I found my first internship. From there I got hired, and then I made another connection who was he worked at the same agency that I did, and he was a Valencia alumni, so he was the one who got me my job now. So it's all about making connections. Don't be afraid to talk yourself up, like hype yourself up. Like, you know that you have the skill for it. Don't be afraid to not talk about it. And yeah, really networking, making those connections, and once you solidify that, then you're potentially making a connection to your next job. So.
Yeah, definitely networking. That's, you know, I remember asking around, and that's how I got my internship with Orlando Weekly, which turned into my first job. And then, I mean, also another key point too, after that I was like, once I graduated, I was applying a lot for like jobs, and I remember applying everywhere, had some awkward interviews, I remember going to this digital agency and being like, yeah, I love print. And they're like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I need a job. It's like super awkward. So you have like weird moments, you know, but most people are understanding. And like Holly said, like, people are not, they're not there to make you fail. They want somebody in there. I went through a deal in like 2016 where I was like, I want to leave my job. So I redid my resume, you know, tried to redo my portfolio, but it was relatively new. So I was like, it's fine. And then just updated my LinkedIn profile as well. And then EA actually reached out to me and was like, hey, we need someone for this designer role. And I was like, cool. Applied and, you know, got an interview, and here I am now. And so I think it's just a matter of being present. And I think LinkedIn profiles help, and I think networking is key for sure.
All right, hello. Thank you for tonight. It's been great. I guess I'm gonna go with the selfish question. I was trying to think of a question first that would apply to students and help them, but I'm gonna fulfill my needs. What are your what's your next professional goal for yourself?
Okay, I'm the only one with the mic, just wanted to make sure. Next level for me, I've been somewhat at the same position for a few years now. Technically, my next role would be considered senior designer, and it's like a level of creative director. To be honest, I already carry a lot of those responsibilities, and then people are like, oh, yeah, it's just a title, you know, so like, it's weird because it's like, okay, well, really, what is the next goal? I want to be a creative director. Where do I want to do that? I don't know. Maybe with EA, maybe somewhere else. So like, I think there's a lot of different like titles and roles that like are so broad that they could fit a spectrum of things. But ultimately, I just want to take care of a brand and make sure to make sure brand integrity is, you know, intact. And like, I just want to be responsible for a brand overall. So creative director, I feel like, is the best way to, you know, describe their role. So.
For me, like, I don't obviously have like that much experience, but I would say definitely wanting to branch out to more softwares. Like, right now I've been learning a lot more JavaScript, but I want to learn like a lot more like SQL and more data entry, not data entry stuff, but like more softwares in general within the web world. So that's probably my next career goal, just to absorb as much software that I can. But yeah.
I feel like I have so many things I need to learn. I would say, so I accidentally got into management about a year ago. I was very resistant to managing anyone because I could barely manage myself. I did not want the responsibility of someone else's career. But turns out I love it. And it's just like supporting other people and watching them grow and succeed is very rewarding. So I had the honor of promoting one of the people that I'm managing into a manager role. So now I am managing a manager, which I am even more terrified about. So my professional goal is just to not screw up anyone's career and make sure they are all growing in the way that they want to grow.
So I'm gonna try to say this without showing all my cards because it's still in the works. But I am right now essentially, and I guess I'm gonna make it a teachable moment as well. I am right now, an opportunity arise for which I have to essentially create a whole new portfolio because it's part of an industry that I have not worked in before. This is like the dumbest answer. But essentially, yeah, I'm like doing work that I am planning on doing like a lot of work that I've never done before because this opportunity arose that I don't want to say because I feel like I'm gonna jinx it. But I am working with different things, like I'm more than like narrative works. That it's something that I don't necessarily do in my work that tends to be very like kind of like pattern, abstract, colorful, just kind of like that initial impact. So I'm working different muscles, I guess. That it's kind of like more in depth, that it's just not about like my own personal voice, but actually have like a narrative behind it. So, vague answer for you. I will tell you later though, actually.
I have nowhere to go but up. So that might not be a helpful answer. No, I think as a graphic designer, I definitely want to, especially so at my company now, it's like they're like just starting to grow their design. Like all they've had is marketing, but they haven't had any designers. So they have like a senior designer and me. And that's their design department. So, and then we both answer directly to the director of marketing, who is not a designer. So it's like, there's definitely, and like I said, they've got like a bunch of brands under their umbrella. In my section of the company, there's 6 brands, but there's other sections that have other brands too. So, I would hope that within this company, it'd be cool to be able to throw a senior on that title at some point. If not, who knows? I don't know. I'm just gonna learn as much as I can and just jump in and see what happens.
So I'm super happy with where I work now. I think short term, I'm grateful to, I've used this comparison before at work plenty of times, but the way to describe my office or the people I work with is essentially like a convention center where there's a bunch of smaller conventions going on at the same time, and you can sort of like poke your head into different doors and learn new things and meet new people. So I think that's where I see myself for the next 5 years, is just poke my head in those different doors and sponging up different things. But on a broader, higher spectrum, I sort of think about career, or my career specifically, as having like a 3-part process, which is like learning the way, leading the way, and changing the way. So now those always overlap, like you're always learning. But leading the way, I think, is the next step too. But I'm happy with where I am and sponging things up. So learn the way, lead the way, change the way.
Hello. I have a question. I'm not in graphic design. I'm actually in the business world, but I have, being that it's a social media world where your work is out there, your portfolio is out there, and people tend to take it and redesign it. How do you guys deal with that?
You fight them.
I've never had to deal with that, so I'll pass it along.
I haven't had to deal with that, but
Would you mean like plagiarism?
It can be plagiarism, or it can be redesigning your design.
Well, the first one was some beans with some bats, so you're the fun person.
I don't think I've ever, as far as I know, I've never had that happen. I think within the creative community, there should be like a respect, like a mutual respect for each other's work if you are an honest creative, I think. But there's no like social media police really, and fewer of those every day too. It feels like so. It's difficult, I think. But what do they say? Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So it's like, okay, well.
How many of you guys have actually been plagiarized, where your work has been, I just feel Marina was gonna raise her hand.
Just putting people on blast. I think it's funny. I think twice it has been plagiarized. One, a person that I didn't know, and it was from like a dribble doodle that I put up, and I'm like, I just messaged them like, yo, not cool, and then took it down. So, then the second time, and this is, I want to be very correct about this. It was a student. I was already a professional that saw my work and kind of took inspiration from it, and I clocked it, and it didn't become like a huge thing, but there had to be like a third party, because it's like, again, make it a teachable moment that it's like, that's not cool, dude. And I said 3, right? I guess it wasn't a big deal. Thankfully, it has never been a huge deal, like dealing with like lawyers or anything like that. I personally think as an illustrator, there's definitely, you know, going back to the talks about trends and what's cool and things like that. I think you definitely do see like similarities and inspirations and things like that. I do think it's like a shitty practice. Sorry, a really bad practice. When people do it, I think it's different with design, because it's something that it's more kind of like iterations and you see the crossovers and things like that. I think with illustration, at least for me, my illustrations tend to be like, so even though kind of they're abstract, they're like very personal because, you know, I'm taking from my heritage and the things that I grew up with. That in itself could be, I guess, like I'm plagiarizing the people that came before me. So it's like a tricky thing, but I do think, you know, you gotta approach it with, you know, grace and give the benefit of the doubt. And if they have bad intentions, shut them down, you know? Like you should be the one making money of your work.
I was just gonna say, like, that was a great point, the making money thing. Like, I remember Dennis, professor, don't remember his last name, but Dennis. I remember him explaining copywriting and like that gray area so well. And if you're just offering news or using it as a informational piece and you're not making money off of it, then it's like, okay, that's fine. But yes, if it is a blatant like rip off of something, then it's just like, come on, man. Exactly, like what you said. But then there's like plenty of artists that have such a distinct style, and you like them, and then you want to imitate it, and you can imitate it in your own way, and make it yours, and it could just be an inspirational piece. I think of Aaron Draplin, and if any of you guys are familiar, his stuff is like mocked all over the world. So it's just, there is a fine line, but I think if your intentions are good, then it'll come naturally. So, but if you have bad intentions and you're straight up stealing stuff, you're just an asshole. So.
All right, so we are just about to finish up. I have one last question for you guys because I want to give you a few minutes to mingle as well and before we say goodbye. Obviously, I'd like you to take some pizza with you as well. But one last question. I feel like I'm the last faculty in the room, and so we have a question on here. What is the most memorable experience you had with one of your faculty members that taught you, and why?
That's a hard one.
Or perhaps we should rephrase that. What's your favorite professor? You don't have to say
Amanda.
Say all the other professors. This is where we get to go back in time. Some of you all were in our program 10 to 15 years ago. So.
I really enjoyed Jason Jones, right, that's his name. His class was awesome, and he was very inspirational. He's just a very motivational person. I still follow him on social media, and he's just great. So being in his class was super fun. Yeah, and everyone's equal as far as professors go. I love all my professors, but like Jason's class was fun, and I only had him for one class, and it was the layout design, and I just thoroughly enjoyed learning a lot about print in his class and just marketing in general. So.
Let's see. For me, like you said, I have so many memories with each of my professors, and I'm very blessed to have had the people that I did because they motivated me in the best ways and challenged me in the best ways. But I will say, the professor I took most of my classes with was John Sosa, and he had so much influence on me. He was really great at critiquing and everything, and that first graphic essentials class really stuck with me with taking him. So yeah, I'd say he was very memorable, but I loved everyone.
This is such a hard question. Man, I'm gonna date myself again. I'm gonna go back to the intro class. Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, although when I went here, I took it with Barbara, who's I know no longer here. And she made us learn Quark and not InDesign, even though InDesign was like a new hotness back then. And I was like, why are we not learning InDesign? This is so dumb. And we had to learn Quark, and it was impossible, and it was like the stupidest tool, and I like could not figure out how it worked. Eventually, I learned how to do it, and I was like, and then like the later class, you got to learn InDesign. And I was like, thank God, it all makes sense now. But then when I got my first job, they didn't have InDesign, they had Quark, and they had like old files in Quark that I had to go update, and I was like, thank you, Barbara, for like teaching me. So that really stuck with me.
I feel you and I had the same first job because it was like for my internship and my first job. They hadn't made the transition to InDesign yet, and I'm like, I still wanted to burn that computer down, of course. So favorite professor, I mean, everyone was awesome. I think specifically that I think it was something that made me a better student and a better designer. Was definitely taking very early on typography with Christy. So the way that it worked out was that I ended up taking it during the summer, right after I took the intro design class, whatever it's called. And I was, very, very green. But in that class, Christy, she's not of this world. I don't know how, she was able to give you, or to give me, the feedback that I needed without giving me any answers. And I think to this day, I always think, and it's like, I did a panel last month for students as well, and one of kind of like my, insights was like, always look, when you're receiving feedback, always look for the people that are asking questions and not giving opinions. Because those are the people that are, that want to know more about your process, and maybe that way you're able to kind of like enunciate and get your mind together and your thoughts together and why you made the choices that you made. So I always love critiques with Christy, and then at the end of my time here, I realized that I'm like, oh my god, that summer was so awesome taking typography that I ended up auditing. I took portfolio twice. The first time I took it over the summer with Christy because I'm like, I want those same vibes for my portfolio class, and then I took portfolio properly that fall semester. But my whole portfolio was already done, and I'm like, I spent that semester doing the stupid bound book that was so bad. So I don't know if it was a win-win, but it was definitely memorable.
I took an elective course actually with Amanda and Christy. It was a hand lettering course online somehow. We did that over Zoom. Yeah, but it was super cool. It was, I think, was it the first time or maybe the second time you guys did that?
Yes, and I'm so sorry.
No, it was great. We did this one exercise called One Letter 100 Ways, and you had to go and you had to pick any letter of the alphabet and do it 100 different ways. Which for logo design it was just a great exercise to think of oh my gosh, because you get to 30 and you're like, oh my gosh, how many more ways can I write a letter G? It's just you feel like a crazy person. I know, and that's why I picked it. It's lowercase, you got all the weird ones, you got okay. So yeah, that was it was a great creative exercise class, and in a lot of these classes we learned so many technical skills, and then the basics of just design in general, but then you had I loved having this creative outlet because it helped me hone my creative process, which is a whole half of design. Like you've got to start somewhere, and like that class really just helped me understand like, oh, where do I start a project? Like when someone's like, hey, this is what we need, where do I start with that? Like, and so it just really helped brainstorming, and I guess, you know, in a way I did learn some skills through that class too. So that was super memorable. It was a summer class and it was awesome, yeah.
I think I'm a little uncomfortable like pinpointing one professor over all the others. But I will say that Jeff Janelle probably had the biggest snowball effect on all the opportunities in my life that have come after graduation. I don't know what he saw or why you know, he chose to spend as much time and attention, you know, cultivating you know, my ability, you know, with challenges and things like that. But Jeff Janelle, you know, I owe a lot to him. He did a lot for me.
Well, thank you all for spending time with us this evening. I really appreciate all of the time you spent being able to share your knowledge, your expertise, your experiences with the students, the alumni, and just the guests that have joined us tonight. So we do owe you all a big round of applause and a thank you. And I believe, just a hint to you all, they said networking's important. I believe I contacted almost every last one of them on LinkedIn if I didn't have their emails. So they are on LinkedIn. And I would encourage you all, if you're students, perhaps connecting with some of the people you've met tonight. And we do have, again, pizza and drinks in there, so you're welcome to go in there and grab some more, or even grab a whole pizza and take it home with you. And with that said, I truly, again, want to thank you guys for taking time out of your night tonight to spend with our group and end our semester off. This is the first official event that we've had, and have invited students back on campus. And we're hoping to do this more, but as you can see, like, the campus is so different since COVID. So I appreciate you guys helping give this opportunity for us to invite students and alumni back on campus. And yeah.
Thank you very much.